Dumb Husky and His White Cat Shizun is a BL novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. Descriptive violence and triggers for sensitive content. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 40. This venerable one cannot believe this. What the hell? The weapon in the elongated yearning was none other than Tianwen. In other words, it was a bunch of golden willow vines that looked exactly the same as Tianwen's. From the patterns to the design, everything was exactly the same. The elongated yearning broke the willow branch. Chu Wanning's expression was uncertain as he handed the willow vines to Ran. Then, he summoned Tianwen in his palm. Comparing the two, it was as if they were looking at a mirror. There was no difference at all. No one had expected such a thing to happen. Even Ran found it hard to believe his own eyes. As someone who had been whipped by Tianwen thousands of times in his previous life, he would never have thought that Jinqinqi would actually give him an identical weapon. What was going on? Everyone turned to look at Gochen Shanggong, who was standing at the side. Gochen Shanggong's expression was one of astonishment as he said, "But in the mortal world, there are actually two wood spirit essences." Shuemeng asked, "What does wood spirit essence mean?" "Ah, it's like this," Gochen Shanggong said, "in this world, there are 5 types of elements. You all know this very well. Every person who cultivates a spirit core will have 1 or 2 attributes. In the mortal world, the person with the greatest talent in a certain attribute will be the essence of that attribute. For example, the goddess of Mount Wu used to be the essence of the earth spirit. However, generally speaking, within a generation, there can only be 1 essence of the same attribute, and the wood spirit essence already exists in the mortal world. Many years ago, I gave him the number 1 weapon of the wood spirit." As he spoke, his gaze fell upon Chu Wanning. "When I forged the 5 top-grade Jinmu weapons, I had originally planned to forge only 1 weapon of each attribute. The other 4 weapons did not have any problems during the forging process, except for the wood spirit Jinmu, which was actually broken into 2 pieces in the furnace. I thought it was the will of the heavens, so I forged the 2 pieces of willow twig into 2 weapons. However, I still believed that it was impossible for these 2 weapons to find their owners at the same time. Thus, I gave one of them to Ji Baihua and asked him to make a brocade box for it, in case any unscrupulous people coveted it. But I did not expect." Gochen Shanggong shook his head and was about to continue lamenting when suddenly, the willow vine in Ran's hand burst out with a stream of colorful red flame. The flowing golden luster began to gradually change, eventually becoming a fiery red color. Ran's mind was in a mess, and without thinking, he opened his mouth and said, "Ah! Damn it!" Chu Wanning wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Gochen Shanggong and Chu Wanning looked at Ran with pity. Ran soon understood why they had such an expression. In fact, he had already thought of it himself. When Jinmu emitted different colors for the first time, it meant that it had submitted to its owner, and it wanted its owner to give it a name. Unfortunately, it was too late. On the silver handle of the willow vine, 3 words slowly appeared. The words were strong and powerful, and the words were written in green feathers. "Ah! Damn it! Shen Bing, ah! Damn it! Ran. Ah!" Although Shuemeng and Shimei did not know the naming rules of this Jinmu, but seeing the scene in front of them, they understood. Shuemeng laughed heartily, laughing so hard that tears were about to flow out. "Only you can give this kind of name, ha 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 ha," good name, good name. Shizun has Tianwen, you have a. Damn it. Ah ha 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 ha. Since Emoran had obtained Jinmue, Shuemeng, and Shimei each chose a weapon they liked. Shuemeng had a long sword, while Shimei had a short flute. However, both of their weapons did not emit a different luster. It was obvious that they had not yet tamed, and were unwilling to submit to the control of the two. However, this did not matter much, as they could always think of a way. Therefore, they were both in a good mood, and at night, a grand banquet was held on the balcony of the spring night. Gochen Shanggong had never brought a mortal to the Golden Pool, so he warmly invited them to stay for the night before leaving. It was his first time entertaining a mortal, so naturally he did his best. On the banquet table, toasts were exchanged, cheese was sour, drums were merry, and the guests and hosts were slightly tipsy. After the banquet, Gochen Shanggong ordered his attendants to bring the guests to a side room to arrange their sleeping quarters, so that they could rest for the night. The guests' room was next to Jinmu's storehouse. Seeing the huge tree, Amoran thought of the dammit that he had just obtained. He could not help but summon the willow tang, and scrutinize it carefully. Unprovoked yearning, breaking the willow branch. Just what did that fox demon, Ji Bai Hua, sense? Why did he say such a thing? What did he mean by that? He had drunk too much that night, and his thoughts were not that clear. He only felt that it was extremely strange. If the longing was not wrong, then how could Chu Wanning unlock the box? Of course, he did not like Chu Wanning. As for Chu Wanning's deep love for him, that was simply the biggest joke. As he pondered, he turned to look at Shizun. Unexpectedly, Chu Wanning was also looking at him from behind. When their gazes met, Amoran suddenly felt his heart tremble, as if it had been stabbed by something small and sharp, and a subtle sour and sweet feeling emerged. Before he could think, he had already grinned at Chu Wanning. But this feeling was only for a moment, and he soon regretted it. He was clearly so annoying, so why did he feel so peaceful and comfortable when he saw him? Chu Wanning was indifferent, but when he saw that Emoran had summoned his Jinmue, he thought for a moment, then summoned Tianwen as well. He walked towards Emoran. Jinmue seemed to have a bad temper. Sensing the approach of another powerful wood spirit, its scarlet sparks flew out, and from time to time, a few sparks would explode, landing on Shuemeng's body. He was actually very competitive. On the other side, Chu Wanning's Tianwen seemed to have sensed the aura of its kind as well, but it had already gotten along well with Chu Wanning, so even though it was brimming with battle intent, the golden light around it was not as restless as if it had seen a ghost. Instead, it gradually grew brighter, and when it saw that its master did not stop it, it calmly became exceptionally dazzling, as if it had decided to let's see what kind of stance an outstanding weapon should take in battle. The two Jinmue weapons were originally of the same mind. Now, one was a fledgling, while the other was a veteran of hundreds of battles. One of them was like a yellow-haired kid who was jumping up and down in a fit of rage, while the other was overflowing with golden light, like a grand master at the peak of the mountain, reserved and proud. Chu Wanning glanced at the willow vine in his hand and pondered for a while. His gaze pierced through the slender eyelashes of the secret chamber and landed on the dammit. He said, Amoran. Shizun. Pick up your, the name seemed a little shameful. Chu Wanning paused for a moment and said, pick up your willow vine, and let's have a look. Amoran's mind was full of confusion, and he didn't know how many thoughts he had. He pinched the space between his eyebrows and smiled bitterly, Shizun, don't joke around, please spare me. I'll let you have 3 moves. I've never used the willow vine before. 10 moves. But Chu Wanning didn't waste any more time. With a wave of his hand, a dazzling golden light slashed towards Chu Wanning. Ran was shocked. His fear of Tianwen was deep in his bones. He immediately raised his hand and used the damage to block. 2 willow vines tore through the snowstorm and soared into the air. Like 2 dragons fighting each other, a series of golden and red sparks exploded from the friction. Although he hadn't learned how to use such a special weapon, he had probably watched Chu Wanning's moves for a long time. Moreover, Ran was a gifted person, so he was able to block Chu Wanning's attack. The two of them had fought for dozens of rounds in the cold pond. Although Chu Wanning had lost, Ran's excellent response had exceeded his expectations. Tianwen's golden and Damit's red danced in the waves of water. Their moves were gorgeous and the shadows of the wind were brilliant. The lake water was torn apart by the fierce shadows of the vines. Finally, the golden and red intertwined together. Chu Wanning's eyes were filled with admiration. However, Ran was already exhausted from parrying and was panting heavily. He didn't see the expression in Chu Wanning's eyes. Chu Wanning said, "Tianwen, come back." The golden willow vines, which were still fierce just a moment ago, suddenly became soft. It was as if the ice had turned into spring water. It scattered into specks of light and melted back into Chu Wanning's palm. Ran was still clinging to Damit. After panting for a while, he simply sat down on the snowy ground. His eyebrows were filled with grievances. "I'm not playing anymore, I'm not playing anymore. Shizun, you bully me." Chu Wanning said. "I've already given you 10 moves." Ran said shamelessly, 10 moves isn't enough. You're giving me 100 moves and that's more like it? Oh my hand, my arm, I'm going to break. She may, help me massage it." He spat out a bunch of words, accompanied by Shwemeng's mockery and Shimei's voice of persuasion. Chu Wanning didn't say anything else. He just quietly glanced at them. It was unknown if it was an illusion, but in the cold blue pond, Chu Wanning's lips were slightly curled up, as if there was a trace of a gentle smile on his face. But it was only for a moment. He then turned his head around, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the giant tree in the middle of the house. No one knew what he was thinking. It was night, and Ran was sitting in his own guest room. The room was covered with fine and pure white sand, and the walls were painted blue. He had cast a spell, reflecting the ripples of the waves like the sea. The window was half open, and the pearl curtains hung gently in the evening breeze. On the table was a lamp made of luminous pearls, which made the room feel warm and comfortable. In the middle of the room, there was a very large shell, which was covered with soft satin. The satin was very fine and soft. Ran laid down comfortably on the bed and summoned the Jinmue. He held it in his hand and examined it closely. Perhaps he was too tired, and before he could play with it for too long, he fell into a deep sleep. The Jinmue was pressed against his chest, flowing with a faint red light, as if it had also fallen into a deep sleep with its master. He did not know how long he had slept. When he woke up again, Ran first felt a chill, followed by an inexplicable and intense pain on his wrist. He took a deep breath, held his head, and slowly sat up. The return of his consciousness made the unfamiliar pain on his wrist even more vivid. He was shocked to find that his wrist had been cut, and his blood had congealed, forming a bloody cocoon. What was going on? Where was he? Ran opened his eyes wide. As he gradually woke up, he found himself in a completely unfamiliar, Gloomy stone room. There was a small opening at the top of the room, and the cold light of the lake squeezed in through the small opening, barely illuminating the narrow room that was less than a foot wide. The grey stone walls were damp and slippery, and under the weak light, they glowed faintly. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.